Good morning.
Probably the last person you thought you'd be seeing in your first class. But I just happened to be across the river in Arlington, and they asked if I'd come by and kick us off, and I said I'd be glad to. And let me just kind of go on. All veterans here?
Yes.
Army? Good. Marine Corps? Air Force? Navy? There you go. Both of them. All right, good. So what we'll talk a little bit about today is a little bit about transition, but also more about translating vision into action. Okay? But I've just been retired for a year. And so I've been kind of going through a bit of my own transition. And one of the things that I tell you two things that I learned in my own transition. One is we live in a pretty closed community in the military. There's an awful big world out there that I might have thought I knew something about, but I wasn't even close. 41 years. And so that was kind of a big adjustment for me. The second thing I realized was I didn't know squat about business. You say, come on, gentlemen, you ran an organization of more than 1 million people with $250 billion budget. Surely you got to know something about business. I never had to make a profit. Right? All I had to do was spend the budget. And that's a bit different. And what I wound up doing was going up to the National Management Association and taking a 1-week MBA course so I could read the cash sheets and the financial statements for the boards I'm on. Because I was going like this. Trying to figure them out. So it was an interesting transition for me. It's one I'm still going through. And the third thing that I've seen is, the Army's a 236-year-old institution. All right? And as I've come started looking at business opportunities, just the way it's come out, I'm associated with a 150-year-old company that's going through a major shift in their business model, where their government business has gone from 60% of their business to 20% of their business. And so that's an interesting challenge in and of itself. I'm working with a 10-year-old company that just got a major influx of capital to the tune of about $10 million to take it to another level. And so I'm watching them and helping them make that transition. And then I'm involved with a company, an educational technology startup company that's about a year old. And the young man is a veteran, and he's a highly energetic young man and with a great entrepreneurial spirit. But come to find out, he didn't know much about business either. I got an email from him the other day after we've been through some stuff trying to get his resources to match his ideas. And he's asked me to write a letter for him to go to business school at Columbia to try to get that together. So anyway, I've had kind of a broad perspective. Now, the Army is not considered a hotbed of innovation. Right? So entrepreneurship is not necessarily my strong suit. But I have had, both in the Army and in Iraq, to figure out a vision, and then two, figure out how to translate it into action in very complex environments. And that's really what you all are going to have to do. So what I just want to, I'll give you 6 thoughts here about developing a vision and then translating it into action. And then I'll close with one of my favorite quotes. And then I'll be happy to take questions from them. First of all, first point, don't sell yourself short. Yeah, coming out of the military into the civilian world is different, but let me tell you, you know how to plan, you know how to organize, you know how to integrate, you know how to get really hard things done in complex environments. Most of the people you'll come in contact with out there don't have a clue how to do those things. You do it naturally. And oh, by the way, you know how to build a team. You've done it all your careers. And again, not many people out there know how to do that well. So, Don't sell yourself short. You're bringing a lot to the table here. And yeah, there'll be new buzzwords and there'll be new things that you're always going to continue to learn. And there's always going to be things you don't know. But you have a lot of skills that you're bringing to the table here, and don't forget that. Second point, and this is kind of the flip side of that. Be self-aware. I mean, you need to know your own strengths and your weaknesses. I was up at the iLab at Harvard a couple weeks ago talking to 3 different veterans who were putting together their own entrepreneurial projects. And it struck me that they were all, it was teams of veterans. You know, they were all vets, so they were coming together. Now, that's good. You relate to each other. But you're not going to get the diversity of thinking if you don't pull in people from outside your own culture. And it is diversity of thinking and action that is good, that will make you ultimately successful in this 21st century environment. Because I believe we are in a world that is continuously changing. And we have to be able to continuously adapt. And if you don't bring together diverse thoughts and ideas, and the people that will give you those diverse thoughts and ideas, you're not going to be able to compete in that environment. So, as I said, you're coming into this from a fairly close society. I don't know, some of you have been out of probably a short time, some of you have been out a while. Just be conscious of you do have some limitations, and be conscious of those limitations, and then work to go around it. Third point. Probably the most difficult thing I had to do as Chief of Staff of the Army, and the most difficult thing I had to do as the commander in Iraq, was to clearly articulate to my subordinates, probably some of you all, what it was I wanted you to accomplish in a very difficult, complex, and uncertain environment. And I felt strongly that if I wasn't clear, believe me, and you know this better than I do, nothing gets clearer as it comes out of the 4-star headquarters and trickles down to the squad. Okay? So if I wasn't clear, it was a mess at the bottom. And he probably thought it was anyway. What I had to do was continually ask myself and my subordinates, come on guys and gals, what is it we're really trying to accomplish here? And that becomes your vision. And what I found is the human mind works iteratively. That you don't sit down, have this great insight and this great flash, and go with it. It's almost like whittling a stick, you know. You start off with a stick, and you keep working at it, and working at it, and working at it, and working at it, and finally you get a sharp stick, and you can do something with it. It takes time to build and grow. It takes your personal, intellectual, and emotional energy to make that happen. Because if you're not clear in your own mind, you won't clearly communicate it to your subordinates. That's probably the most important thing you can do. And when I talk to these young entrepreneurs, and I ask them, okay, now, what are you really trying to do here? I get a lot of fuzziness. Okay? And then I say, okay, now what makes your product and your idea different than what's out there now? And I get fuzziness. So I just tell you, keep forcing yourself to get very, very clear in your own mind about what you want to accomplish, and then clearly articulate that to your subordinates. That's the third point. Fourth point. Once you have that vision and that idea, and it's clear in your mind what you want to do, then build a focused business plan to make it happen. You know the old Army adage, or the old adage about 80% plan violently executed is better than the 100% plan that never gets off the mark. You're never going to get a 100% plan. You got to be comfortable with that level of uncertainty. But you got to be focused in your execution. What I see a lot out there now is the resources and the business plan don't match. And if the resources and the business plan don't match, you don't get the output that you're looking for on the timelines that you're looking for. One of the companies I'm working with, they had a little cash flow problem. and we're advertising we're going to do this, but we don't have the cash to make that happen. We have to go back and kind of restructure and do that. So, I mean, this is where your planning will come in. You know how to do this. But you have to have it. Now, I said you're going to go with an 80% solution, and this leads into the fifth point. You got to have a way to continuously assess what you're doing, because your world is changing around you as you're executing. And in a period of as short as 6 months, the environment that you thought you were operating in is probably going to change. And you have to have the ability to assess what's going on, to assess the environment around you, and adapt quickly to changes in the environment. So you've got a plan for focused execution, but within that plan, there's got to be a way to assess what you're doing and to assess how the environment around you is changing as you're going forward. Otherwise, you'll get left in the dust. Now, the hardest thing I had to do in Iraq, in the Army with a big organization, was I couldn't keep having these wonderful ideas every week and changing direction. Right? You know the old bullwhip theory? When the general shakes the handle of the whip, that poor soldier at the tip of the whip is going 100 miles an hour in 10 different directions, okay? So it's an art to keep the organization focused on a broad azimuth, but then be agile enough to adapt within that azimuth so you stay competitive in the environment that you're operating in. And I can't tell you how to do that. That'll come to you with experience. But you have to have the ability to assess how you're doing. And when you assess how you're doing, you, the leader of your enterprise, you have to ask the hard questions. And you have to challenge the conventional wisdom. When you're having these big brainstorm sessions and the great ideas are bubbling up, yeah, it feels good, right? Yeah, oh, that's great. I'm going to do this, we're going to do this. Yeah, it's all going to come together. Well, you know, there's millions of those little brainstorm sessions going on all over the country. And maybe hundreds of them work. And what I see is leaders don't ask the hard questions. You know, challenge your own assumptions, ask hard questions, challenge conventional wisdom, but make sure you're asking a hard question because you've got a competitor out there that's really, you know, that's asking the hard questions himself. But if you don't ask them as the leader, they won't come into play. I found that in Iraq. I'd sit around the table with the generals and say, okay, who disagrees with this? Hey, great plan, General. I said, well, okay, if nobody disagrees with it right now, how about if you think about it later, send me an email. And every time I do that, I get 5 or 6 emails that night saying, hey, General, here's what I really think. But if I didn't ask, I'd never get it. Okay? So as part of that continuous assessment process, you have to ask the tough questions. Did I say I was going to give you 6 points? I'm going to give you 7. Okay, 6 point. One of the things you'll find as the leader of your enterprise is that you have to figure out the right balance of internal and external focus. Yeah, you got to have enough focus internally to get the organization up and running, and you got to monitor its progress, okay? But I think what you'll find is to make the organization successful, you're going to have to spend an awful lot of time, you the leader, outside the organization, shaping the external environment for your success. You're the one that's going to be talking to the venture capital firms for money. You're the one that's going to be talking to clients. What I used to tell my generals was the higher up you go, the more the keys to your success lie outside the organization rather than inside the organization. And as the leader, you're the one that needs to go out and bring home the things that will make the organization ultimately successful. And a lot of times in the early stages, it's money. And you might not like to do that. In fact, frankly, I find it's hard for me to go out and look and say, I need money. You got a 4-star general with his hand out. You know? But there are people that are very good at that. And if you're uncomfortable doing it, find someone that likes to do it. But you're the one that's responsible for shaping the external conditions for your organization's success as the leader. Okay? And I'll tell you, you'll do more to help the company with external work than internal work, eventually, once you get it, started up and going. And lastly, I can hardly read my own handwriting. Stick with it, right? Nobody succeeds at everything all the time. Things are gonna get screwed up, things aren't gonna go your own way. Assess, take a step back, assess, and go forward again. Don't quit. And this is my favorite quote, and I'm sure you've heard it. It's Theodore Roosevelt at the Sorbonne in about 1903. It's not the critic that counts. It's not the one who points out how the strong one stumbled or the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the one who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred with dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and often comes up short again and again, and who, if at best in the end, knows the value of high achievement and the great devotions, and who, if at worst, if they fail, at least fail while daring greatly, so their souls will never be counted among those cold and timid ones that know neither victory nor defeat. Dare great things. You all are the future leaders of this country, and you'll be successful. Good luck to you all. Thanks. I got 2 minutes here. I'll be happy to take some questions if you have any, please.
Did you ever get a chance to sit in on a briefing with Colonel John Boyd when he was at the Pentagon? He created the OODA loop, talked about it.
Yeah.
I just wondered if you...
I don't think, the name is familiar to me. I don't think I did.
What do you base your approach to continuous assessment? What tool or methodology would you suggest for continuous assessment?
Well, I had it took me a year in Iraq to build an assessment process that I was comfortable was giving me the insights I needed for the plan to succeed. It took me a year. And why? Because people will tend to measure what they can, not what you need. And it wasn't until I made the staff sit down and look at each of the effects that we were trying to achieve, and then answer 3 questions on what we were trying to achieve on each of those lines. And the first question was, what are we trying to accomplish? Second was, how will we know whether we're accomplishing that or not? And third was, how do we measure that? And that's what we had to do. Otherwise, I was getting the stuff that the staff already could measure, and that wasn't what I needed. So those are the 3 questions, and it just helped sharpen everybody's thinking about what we needed to measure. And again, it all goes back to the first question: what are we really trying to accomplish? That will lead you to outputs, and outputs are what's measurable and what matters. You come from a very process-oriented culture. And I know that's in the Army, and I'm sure it's probably pretty close in the other services. Business is about outputs. It's not about process. Just because you check all the blocks in the process doesn't mean you're successful if you don't achieve the output. If you ask the first question, what are we really trying to accomplish? It drives you to output, drives you to focus on output. Who else? Okay. Oh, there you go.
Casey.
Thought you were leaving.
No, I wouldn't do that. First of all, thanks for being here. Really appreciate you, sir. My name is Terry Roberts, Marine, and my question my question was in regards to Army Communities of Excellence that was related to the Malcolm Baldridge Performance Excellence criteria, and if you were using anything in regards to that for the startup round.
Wow. Were we using what, metrics or?
The metrics, the strategic planning, leadership, customer focus, From what I understand, the Army Communities of Excellence is a criteria that's directly aligned with the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. And if you had had any experience or know of anyone that's using that type of criteria to integrate in with the startup world.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. But let me tell you, it's a good idea, the Army Communities of Excellence. But what happens in big bureaucracies is that, okay, you have some criteria. And then they start establishing standards for all those criteria. So they can measure things, right? And then a whole bureaucracy gets stood up to execute those standards. And the whole organization continues to grow just because you've established some standards here. You have to watch that. As I said, the Army's not necessarily thought of as a hotbed of innovation. It's especially the Army and the Pentagon. It's too damn big. And what I saw was we had good ideas. We had a program that we were using to facilitate modernization. We gave this colonel and a small team a bunch of money. They went to Iraq and Afghanistan, found out what the soldiers needed, and came back and went out and bought it and got it to them as quick as we could. Well, it worked great at a small level. So we said, okay, how do we institutionalize that? And it was even harder than that. The question was really, how do we institutionalize it without stifling the creativity that is essential to its success? And candidly, I could never do it to my satisfaction. Because once you bring something into the bureaucracy, it's dead. It's dead. So. Anybody else? There you go.
Thanks again for being here. One question is, you've worked with other veterans, started companies. If there was one thing that you had to point out that was a mistake, maybe commonly made by veterans starting businesses, what would that one thing be that you could advise everyone here to think hard about avoiding?
Again, my experience in veteran startups is pretty narrow. It's about 4, and I haven't seen what they're doing. And I guess the most important thing you can do is figure out what you're trying to accomplish. What is really your niche? Just keep sharpening that and sharpening that. And what is it you're providing that nobody else in the world is providing? Be clear about it. And if you get it clear in your own mind, you'll be amazed how much easier it is for you to articulate it to other people, the other people that are going to give you the financing you need to get it done. And I will tell you, as you're out there talking to the young entrepreneurs, there's a lot of fast talkers out there. Great ideas, fast talkers. There's not a lot of doers. And you're doers. And you can take those ideas and your visions and translate them into action. You all have the skills already to do that. So don't be intimidated by the fast talkers. And here's something I found out as Chief of Staff of the Army. Anytime you get into a new field, they all have their own acronyms and their own buzzwords, right? And that can be intimidating. And I walked into the Army staff. I've been in the Army, by that time, 37 years. I thought I knew something about the Army. And they started whipping all these buzzwords on me. And I said, wait a minute, how about English? And what I found is if someone cannot articulate their idea to you in plain and simple English, they really aren't clear in their own mind about what you're talking about. And so I insisted, no acronyms, just English. Talk about it. And like I said, so don't be intimidated by the fast talkers. There's talkers and there's doers. Y'all are doers. Some of you could be talking doers. Yeah, go ahead.
Darryl, I'm just going to do it from up here.
That's good.
On Paul 482nd Airborne Division.
Good.
We talk about teams and the importance of teams, especially in startup type of environments. What happens when a person, from your purview, is not a good fit for a team?
I mean, what happens when the generals don't fit?
What happens when those things just don't gel over time?
Yeah, you can tell too, And usually what happens is someone goes up and says, General, this really ain't working out. Maybe you could miss a meeting and then maybe miss another one. But I guess that's a key point. I mean, picking the people that are going to help you through this is really important. They got to have the right skills. The skills have to be balanced among your team. And they got to fit. And on the one hand, you got to be broad enough to accept people, different mindsets, different attitudes, different backgrounds. But on the other hand, when it becomes so destabilizing, you got to cut your losses. You know, they tell generals this about their aides. You know, picking an aide is an emotional event for a general because they're always there. They turn around and bump into them. You know, they close the door at night. You know, they're always there. And if there's some reason personally you're just not connecting, it gets really miserable. And it's not miserable for the general. But it's really miserable for the aide and everybody around him because the general gets really grumpy when he's mad at the aide. They say, cut your losses quickly. Cut them quickly. And so when you realize something's not working, cut your losses. But you know, I know you all saw this in your time. People have a hard time looking at other people in the eye and say, you're not cutting it. You're not fitting. But you owe them the courtesy of telling them that up front so they at least know it and give them a chance to come on board. Please.
Good morning, sir. Chris Pavlak, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines.
Hello.
I'm wondering, where do you think the most friction lies as you start a company, from start to finish, from vision to execution? Where do you think the most friction lies? Is it raising money or somewhere through the process that is kind of unseen?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on what type of company and what industry you're in. I think it'll probably vary by industry. You know, this education technology company that I'm working with, we're spending a lot of effort just on the product, you know, on the ones and zeros, and getting that stuff wired to produce the output that we think we need. And you know, right now, it's a trade-off between whether that's the most important thing we're focusing on or raising money. So it's not a very good answer. I don't think. I guess I'm saying that I don't think there's one thing to focus on. And I think it'll change over time, and it'll be different for the different kinds of industries. But you got to get your product. You got to get your vision. You got to get a product that you can put something tangible in front of somebody. And to do that, you got to get money, and then you got to balance all that out. That's kind of a waffly answer, but best I can do. Yeah.
Good morning, sir. Marcel Shako, 1st Cavalry Division. I was just wondering 2 questions. First, if the education app doesn't work for you, are you looking for another startup to invest in?
Nice.
Second, sir,
I'm not quite at the venture capital level yet. I'm still a pensioner.
second is, as you transition out of the military, what are the businesses that you're associated with? What are the qualities of the businesses that you associate with that you've been working with, and why did you choose to work with them?
What are the qualities?
Or what kind of businesses, if you're allowed to disclose?
Sure. Great. The 150-year-old company is Colt Defense. They make rifles. And as I said, I took advantage of that opportunity because they were going through a huge change in their business model. I mean, 60% government sales to 20% government sales. I mean, that's a huge shift. And I wanted to be with a business that was going through that level of change. The 10-year-old company is a company called FedBid. And it's a local company here that does reverse auctioning for commodities and simple services for the federal government and large businesses. And they started this about 10 years ago. Basically, the way it works is, you know, you're a contracting officer in the Army, and you want to buy 100,000 rolls of toilet paper, you call the FedBid guys, they put it out to their network of sellers, and the sellers bid down the price. And the government saves anywhere from 10 to 15% on their cost estimates. Now, the interesting thing is, because, as I said, the government's not a business, They don't have to make a profit. It's hard as hell to crack the culture of the government. I mean, it's just to show you how bad it is. They do 60% of their business in August and September. Imagine that. When I was a division commander, I gave back $1 million at the end of 1 year. They said, "Thank you very much, dumbass," and they docked me $1 million on next year's budget. That was a disincentive. But anyway, so that's the other one. But that's what you. If you think you're going to make a lot of money working with the government, I'd look someplace else. The private sector. Private sector is where it's going to happen. But anyway, I wanted to see a company that was getting a major influx of capital and watch it grow to the next level. And then the education startup company is Roots Learning, and they basically have what they do is they connect the veteran with mentors and with the trade associations. And so you have a veteran who needs a skill, they provide the online learning and credentialing training so that the veteran can pass the credentialing exam, and because the trade association has a vested interest because they've invested already, they have about a 70% placement rate. And right now we're in between versions of technology. Version 1, the pilot worked pretty well. Now we're working on version 2, but just can't get that thing quite out the door. It's just a couple more months. But I think once we get that, it'll be very helpful. So those are the three things. And I wanted to get in and see what it was like to do a startup. I mean, the first time I went into a venture capital office up in Boston with these guys to ask for $1 million to try to put version 2 together, that's pretty neat.
James Liu, University Ventures. We actually just spoke with your friend at the Veritas.
You did, yeah.
Yeah, a few weeks ago. Good guy. And we're wondering, I'm wondering, where do you see Veritas going in the long term, and what would they do if he went to business school?
Well, he's like you all. He's struggling with taking this company now to another level, and I think he's realizing, and like you all will realize, you need to continue to learn and grow continuously. And so he wants to make sure he's got the business side of this nailed down. He's a great fundraiser. He understands the technology stuff. He realized he was a little light on the business side. So he went back through that. Where do I see it going? I mean, I saw the power of this for veterans. Because what they're doing is they're connecting the veteran with the trade association, and they're the middleman. There's lots of people out there right now that know where the veterans are that need the jobs. And there's lots of people out there that know where the jobs are. But there's nobody out there, one stop, that connects the veteran with the skill and with the job. And so I see great short-term utility for veterans employment. But beyond that, you remember when you were in your economics class, and you got to the part about as businesses change, resources move from less efficient industries to more efficient industries, and those are jobs. And what's happening now is technology is causing so much change in the environment that people are constantly going to need to be retrained for different things. And I see this online learning idea as having great potential.
He's a very good guy, good fundraiser.
He's getting better now.
He is. Tell him I said hi.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, well, listen. Good luck to y'all. I meant what I said. You all are the future leaders of this country. Go out there and attack it, and for everything that it's worth, just like you did it in military service. Good luck. Thanks.